Pontus, I have found, being an Angel, heavy Angelina Jordan fan, that one of the wonderful perks is coming across other angels in the Angelina Jordan community. And these
Yes.
were the circumstances when I traveled to the Swiss French border when I first met Adrian. And Adrian was extremely wonderful and generous with his hospitality. And he took me as an official tour guide around the CERN Atomic Research Facility, which was mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. And I have done that a second time.
Okay.
It's been a wonderful experience because we can actually literally say this is rocket science. And what is wonderful about Adrian is because he's been involved in this facility for 45 years and he's an official tour guide, he makes all of this complications accessible. He has a way of explaining things clearly and for the common person like myself. And the other wonderful thing is, last time I was there, just about a month ago, I was in the facility for 5 hours, and Adrian and I had a non-stop 5 hour conversation. And it was wonderful. And the wonderful thing about it was, I found out that Adrian, as a scientist, he has a deep probing mind. But what he is able to do, he takes that same deep probing mind into every single aspect of life. And not every scientist will do that. Some scientists will only confine that aspect to their particular field. And so Adrian and I had a very wide-ranging, very interesting conversation. And tonight, Adrian and I and you will be continuing that conversation.
Okay. Great. Maybe I could also come, Adrian.
Of course.
Is there a
Please.
waiting list?
No, you are welcome to come.
That's the CERN Collider, is it?
Exactly.
How many visitors come through there each year?
130,000 visitors a year.
Wow. You're giving us angels the grand tour. The perks.
And one of the interesting avenues that our conversation went to, we were, of course, inevitably talking about Angelina Jordan, and we were talking about how we react and how other people react, and we were talking about the nature of that reaction. And then we very specifically honed in on the question, where do we feel? Not how do we feel, but where do we feel?
Okay.
And this was a very interesting moment in the conversation because, Adrian, is it fair for me to say that you felt that we first and foremost felt in our brain? Would that be a fair interpretation of our conversation?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
You said that the feelings could arrive from the body, and then I said that you feel in the brain, even if there are things that can come from the body, but in the end, the brain is the one that perceives it.
Yeah, exactly. It's interpreting the signals. If I get goosebumps, of course, it's a sensation on the skin, but the signals are, of course, traveling up to the brain, and the brain makes sense of what is going on.
That's right.
But when you're talking about getting goosebumps from an experience, then it's the brain that triggers the response on the skin, not the
other way around.
Yeah.
Yes.
It does make sense, and logically, I cannot disagree with that sentiment, but there are a couple of things which make me wonder about it. For example, one of the things is every culture associates the heart with feeling. I don't think something which is that universal is a coincidence, and maybe the heart feels first and then the brain interprets the feeling. Maybe the brain makes sense of the feeling because we have expression in the language like, I feel it in my guts, or it was a visceral experience. I'm not sure it's so clearly horse and cart relationship between the brain and feeling as opposed to the chicken and egg, where there's almost an interchangeability between them.
But let me give you my interpretation. It is that the heart and the brain are very well connected. But if you get an emotion from an image, from your surrounding, or maybe it is a sound, you hear a shout of alarm, that you perceive first in your ears, your brain interprets that, and that makes your heart accelerate. And in this way, you have this reaction. And often people say they feel it in their heart, but actually it's something that is triggered by the brain. This is my interpretation.
I understand that, and I agree with that, because as you would say, for example, if someone gets angry because they're insulted, the brain understands the insult and then you get angry. I understand that. But I think of the relationship of the brain and the heart and almost every aspect of the body to be like a 200-piece orchestra. And they are working as a unit and they are working as one. And they not only are they in harmony, but they're also in unison. And if you lift up the hood of a car and you look at the engine and you look at all the intricate parts and how they're all interconnected and they're all almost working as a unit, that's how I understand. And I won't say it's a moot point whether the brain receives it first. But for example, if a woman just has given birth and after the birth, she has depression.
Yes.
Now, that type of depression, maybe it's related to blood loss, and there is a type of depression where there is no external reason for there to be depression. And so sometimes people have almost a physiological emotional reaction which completely has nothing to do with the brain.
That is the case where the body is the cause of sort of misery, you could say. It could be depression, it could also be a chronic pain, and that is then putting you in a bad mood. Also with postpartum depression is that there's lots of hormonal changes in the body, and this then in the end is felt by the brain because that is where you perceive it. It's the same with pain. There are nerves that conduct this to the head, and this is where you realize and you react to it. Like a woman giving birth. With the epidural, one can make that she doesn't perceive the pain. So the pain is in the body, but it doesn't get transmitted to the brain. And that's why she doesn't feel it. So the nervous center is really the brain, the one that orchestrates all the other instruments. If you compare it to an orchestra, you have a central point that relays all the information.
A baby will react very strongly emotionally, even before their brain is very much developed. Yeah. Do different rules apply for them in terms of, does the brain would not take it in the same way because the brain isn't quite developed, and yet the babies will react very deeply and very spontaneously?
What is different in the baby's brain is that they don't have logical thinking and the memory that has been built up. So they react in a more direct way at that moment, which is more primitive. But the feelings are there.
I know for me, whenever I listen to Angelina Jordan, there's always deep emotions. And also, of course, tears come to my eyes. And the emotions are very complex, I feel. It's like I can't put my finger on what it is that makes me feel what I feel. But somehow I suspect that it has something to do with the quality of her voice and the resonance or the vibrations that, for me, somehow triggers memories. I think it's down to very basic memories that I don't even know what kind of memories are there, but I think it's from my childhood, because I do get strong sense of comfort when listening to her voice. And it's quite unique. I never experienced anything like it. I know that smells, I had this epiphany once when I went into a store, which I hadn't been into that particular store in this small village where we used to have a summer place when I was a child. And when I stepped into this store, the smells really got to me. They were like hardwired to the nostalgic memory of being a child. And that was very strong. And it's similar to the kind of feelings I get when I listen to Angelina. It's like something is hardwired for me to just feel something.
I very much agree with that, yes. I think also that if you look at the brain, where you hear and where you feel, these two zones are very close together. And so there's a very good communication between the ears and the feelings. So that may be also one explanation why sound can have this effect on us. But how Angelina, with her voice, makes us feel this way, like bring up the emotions, you get tears, you get shivers, and this is very special, and it is not clear what the specific sound that is caused by. But somehow she is able to make all these sounds and make them also flow so nicely from one into the other that it becomes something really that makes you feel emotional.
Rather than focusing on what Angelina Jordan does, let's focus on what happens within us. Because when you're listening to Angelina Jordan, okay, you're hearing her with your ears, but you don't go through a logical process. The music goes right directly into your body. It almost bypasses the brain, which for me is almost another little bit of evidence of how maybe sometimes the brain can be having a secondary role in all this.
I don't wanna die. I sometimes wish I'd never been born at all. Oh, baby, can't do this to me, baby. Just gotta get out, just gotta get out of me. Yeah.
And also the other thing which is very fascinating and very rich is not just the depth of emotion or the strength of emotion, but is it one emotion which gets stronger and deeper, or does the nature of the emotion change in terms of how we react to Angelina?
Yeah, this is very hard to say. But when I thought about sound and what it can do to us, I found a very good example. That is when in old days, when a teacher was writing on a blackboard with a piece of chalk, but then his nail would scratch over the board, you would have the whole class go. It was a terrible sound that you could not stand and make you shiver. I don't know if you have known this, Pontus.
Yeah, of course.
But
it's a classical.
Yeah. But this, to me, was a very good example of how sounds can influence us in a direct way, having impact on our feelings. Now, this was negative, but there are sounds like that will give you a positive emotion.
When a cat is very happy, the cat produces a sound that is very warm and welcoming. It's purring. But, I mean, that sound is really welcoming and feels like it's something you almost get a little bit addicted on. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also one of the features of Angelina's sound and her tone is that it is addictive in some way. And also the fact that many reactors point on this fact that whenever they haven't heard her for a while and they hear her once again, they are once again shocked at how good she is. Mm-hmm. You can't really take it in and understand and remember the intricacy of the sound. I think that's the part that gets you so shocked each time, because it has so many layers.
It's also so direct. You don't have to think about it, or
Exactly.
you can relax and just let it come over you.
But you use the expression, you don't have to think about it. And that is the key little phrase, which to me, it makes me think that almost is like the bodies are the receptacle of the feelings. The bodies receive the feeling, and then the brain interprets the feeling, or the brain reacts to the feelings. It's to me, it's more like a chicken and egg, and or maybe they are spontaneously coincidental. Maybe they almost happen in the same milliseconds. There's almost no gap. And the other thing which strikes me is the nature of the emotion, or maybe it's because it's so deep that it's almost beyond emotion what people are experiencing. They're almost having, their whole emotional world is getting reawakened. It's almost like we have to redefine, we can't just discuss emotions as such. We almost have to invent new terms to discuss what happens to Angelina's music.
I read an interesting comment the other day. Somebody said something about those people that are really getting Angelina and really hooked by Angelina. They made a comparison to that movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where a group of people were injected with a vision, and they all got together and had this urge to go to a place and to live something. I thought that was really interesting, because it's almost like an urge to really get that emotion once more and to share it with people that has the same experience.
The spaceship lands and they capture you, and then they take you to a different galaxy. That's what's happening with the Angelina experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
It gives this feeling, and you're addicted to it because it's so good. Then you want to share it with your friends, with everybody, because it's an important part of it.
And of course, that's the problem with that you can't make people feel the same way you feel. So it's, oh, please, can't you feel exactly the same? I would be so happy. And my wife just goes, what are you talking about? I don't get it. But of course, we have our community. We know people that are very much like us.
But I can also imagine that it takes some time for people to tune in to the sounds and to get that feeling. Some people have it instantly, but also for me, it was not instant. I had to hear a couple of songs and then I liked them, but it was not that I would say it has caught me. But then I saw videos of reactors that said, oh, it gives me goosebumps. And I was thinking, but that's strange. What are they talking about? And it only came later that I got the sound and I felt it.
Why do you think that is? That some are instantly just struck, and some are just like
taking it slowly.
Yeah.
If I may offer a theory, I think when you're a scientist, you have a very developed cerebral function, and you have a very strong filter before you can react emotionally. Not many people have a 50-50 balance between the brain and the emotion. Some people are top heavy and some people are gut heavy. And if we were all the same, it would be a very dull world. And thankfully, we're not all the same.
Thank God for that.
But you can hear Angelina Jordan sing a song, the first song you ever hear, and you think, that's phenomenal. But there are other songs that you can hear from other artists you also might think are phenomenal. But then when you hear a second, and then a third, and then a fourth song from Angelina, and they're all equally phenomenal, and then every song you hear is phenomenal, then it changes it. There are other songs, I think, which are fantastic from other artists, but they're not every song the way it is with Angelina. That makes a big difference. And the other thing I still cannot get my head around is, I think I have to call it the boredom factor. even good and pleasant and wonderful experience, we become acclimatized to. We get used to it. The extraordinary becomes ordinary, but not with Angelina. And to me, that is a mystery. Yeah. And that is really why we are having this podcast tonight, because we're always trying to understand, why are we feeling like this? What is the mechanism of how we are feeling? What is going on?
My own experience was that instant connection. And I think it was partly due to the psychological state I was in, because I was feeling blue and bored, quite frankly. I had nothing to do, and I was just going over the internet looking for things to amuse me. It was a lot of clips from great artists and from AGT and whatever. But then Angelina came up, and it was like a lightning strike. and that just goes to show you how big a difference it is between her artistry and all the others. At least for me and my chemistry, because it really stood out, and I immediately thought I must listen to more. And then I got to experience what you talked about, Alan, that each song was a marvel. Each song was something that was on a whole different level. And also the emotions were present in all of them, in one form or the other. It really is a phenomenon.
If you go to a Middle Eastern tapestry shop, and you look at this big, wonderful tapestry, and you look at it from a distance, but then you go nearer and you have a magnifying glass, and you see all of the intricate needlework. Listening to Angelina, it's all of the intricate words usage, the way she explodes the word and she enlightens the word to us. This is part of her wonder.
And it never bores you. There's so much emotion on one side, and there's also so much variation that you can play the same song over and over again.
But what strikes me is that when we are talking about emotion tonight, we're almost talking about emotion as if it's linear, as if it's a one-dimensional experience. But each one of us has such a different emotional reaction and a different emotional range. For example, if Pontus is happy and if I am happy, we may experience happiness as two different things. We may experience it as two different ways. And so even the word emotion almost becomes a cliche. And the way we are experiencing the emotion from Angelina Jordan, each one of us has a different story around how we are experiencing different emotion. And maybe emotion is not even the best word. Maybe we need different words to try and explain how we are feeling, which is why we are starting with, where do we feel?
I think for the moment it's easiest to use the word emotions, because we talk about the feelings and no other words how to describe this best. Of course, if we find something that is more precise, can differentiate between different emotions, then of course we can enlarge our vocabulary.
But it's also the fact that do we really need to go in with a magnifying glass? Do we really need that?
No,
I mean,
we
it's
don't need
just let us sit back and enjoy the ride in one sense. Yeah. But of course, it's our curiosity as a human being about what is it that really does this effect, drives us.
Over and over again, we hear from angels, we hear from Angelina Jordan fans where they say, she has changed my life. Now, I'm very curious about the gap, about the journey from going from reacting emotionally to having your life changed. What is that process? If you start from A, how do you get to B? That is the question. I don't have an answer for that one.
I think Adrian has an answer. No, I'm just kidding. Over to you.
I can try.
Yeah.
No, I think it comes from this need to share. This is what changes people's lives. They have an experience and it is so fantastic for them that then they decide that their lives should change because they should share this with other people. They should try to understand more about it and then also say, this makes me feel good. I have to try to make other people feel good. And this is, I think, where the change comes from. That you see also other angels that they say Angelina is so inspiring them to be better people because she gives such great examples. And then you become followers and you say, we need to do well also. And then this is how people change their lives.
I think one part of the key is being in an emotional state for long periods of time and continuing to have that kind of opening up of your emotions, together with the fact that I think the way she thinks and communicates through song is very, very, what do you say? It's not thought out. It's spontaneous. It's like her soul, for lack of a better word. It's like she transmits her soul through the way that she sings to you. And in that, some of that rubs off on us.
Exactly, yeah.
And we get that little, like a seed of good things that we could do with our lives.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good point, Pontus, because if you listen to Angelina Jolie when she was young, when she was 9 and 10, and she was singing Christmas songs, as a young child, she considered Christmas to be very special, and she captures how special she feels about Christmas in her singing.
Yeah, and the basis is, of course, that kind of unconditional love and universal love that gets into our, perhaps subconsciously at first, and then we start to act upon it, and we stop killing the spiders in our house because they have a right to live, like in my case. And we also see the good in people that aren't very good to begin with, but we can see behind that and see there's a human being there. And so it gets almost religious here. I'm not a big fan of that, but I guess most religions are based on love for the fellow man.
And so they should be, because you don't want to be bogged down in negativity. And the wonderful thing I really like about religion is it provides you for a blueprint of how you should live your life. You don't have to sit down and work out every single moral issue in your life. You have a predetermined moral doctrine. And to approach every person with love is really almost one of the highest forms of religion. And it's common to many religions, but it's also a liberating experience.
It makes everyday life easier.
Yeah.
It really does.
And much better also. You treat everybody you meet in a kind way. And also on the street, I'm much more than usual. I give priority to cars. Maybe didn't have the right to, but as I am in a good mood, I say, go ahead. You don't have any negative impact in taking the road before me.
Very poetically, when she says, I don't do darkness. That's poetry.
This then influences us to say, treat each other well and share the happiness that we also perceive.
Of course, in that lyric, the first time she says, I don't do darkness, but then she repeats it and she says, we don't do darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So she's really just incorporating
the listener.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, people, we don't do darkness.
It's almost like a line from the Spice Girls song, if you want to be my buddy, then you have to come along on my terms. So if I don't do darkness, then we don't do darkness if you want to be my friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the message is so simple, and it's so obvious, and it's so healthy, but it's part of the human tragedy that so many people don't understand the message. It's so simple and it's so obvious.
Yeah.
If she says, just be kind to each other, okay, you can be a bit cynical and say, oh, this is out of the mouth of a child. But there's a lot to be said for what comes out of the mouth of a child.
Yeah.
And I think also she's the right type of person in the right time period to make it happen, to make some kind of dent in the darkness of the world, because I don't think there's any better way to make people think about these things than through song, through music. If she were to go into politics, I think it would easily crash.
It would be a demotion.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the highest form I think we can have to spread a good message.
Some things really, when you look at them, they are so well synchronized. They're so much in harmony. For example, the concept of being in love and getting married. It's so obvious, and they work together, and when they fit, perfectly wonderful and beautiful. But so too with Angelina Jordan, when she sings about spreading love and being kind to each other, but then her singing reinforces that. So we get the message in stereo. We get it through her words, and we get it through our reaction to her singing.
I think also we get it a little bit through her own soul and her own philosophy, which comes across in some mysterious way. Don't ask me how, but in some way I believe that.
I think everything about her is surrounded by mystery, because we can't even sort out how we feel and why we feel the way we do. So that's another mystery, which is inscrutable and enigmatic.
Yeah.
Because we got you on, Adrian, because if you can explain rocket science and simplify it, we thought maybe there's a chance that you could explain the Angelina Jordan phenomena simply and in a way that we haven't heard before.
I can only explain a very small part, which is this part of interconnectivity between the ears and the feelings. But it in no way explains how she accesses that. Yeah.
But even in science, there are great areas of mystery, isn't there? I sometimes wonder, how much do we really know about everything, about reality? Is it like, do we know 1%? Do we know 10%? Do we know 90%? How far advanced are we really?
In the 60s, there was a Beatles song, and there was one line that Ringo Starr sang. He said, "What do you see when you turn out the lights? I can't tell you, but I know it's mine." And to me, I always interpreted that this is the nature of subjective experience. This is how I feel, and this is the only thing that I know. And our feelings is not to say subjective or objective, but our feelings are our reality. And our feelings are real to us. Sometimes feelings can be, dare I say, illusionary. If you have too much alcohol, your feelings may be a little bit distorted. And the challenge for us as human beings is the clarity of our feelings and to have it as least distorted as possible. And that is a very big challenge. Adrian, is this the fourth time you've been on the podcast?
Yes.
I'm sure within 6 or 9 months, we can think of a fifth reason to invite you back for another podcast.
Yes, I hope so.
Because we always want a very deep, probing mind to look at areas that we ordinary mortals cannot fathom.
Who knows? Maybe next time we'll meet in person again.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Like we met in
Norway.
In Norway, which
Yes.
was marvelous. I hope we get an occasion soon again.
You've seen the video where everyone is dancing in New Hampshire to dime. So maybe we can have a whole collection of angels dancing around the Hadron Collider at the CERN Institute.
Of course.
Maybe they can sing "Fly Me to the Moon" next to the International Space Station.
That'd be something.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank
Adrian.
you.
Adrian.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Not trying to be in there, not trying to be cool, Just trying to be in there. Just tell me, are you too? Can you feel where the wind is? Can you feel it through all of the windows inside this room? 'Cause I wanna touch you, baby. I wanna feel you too. I wanna see the sunrise and us, it's just me and you. Light it up, oh, let's have fun tonight. Make it up, fall in love, try. But you'll never be alone. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. I hold you when things go wrong. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Baby, I'm right here. We were short like a jacket, so does yours still. We will roll down the rapids to find a way that fits. Can you feel where the wind is? Can you feel it through all the windows inside this room? 'Cause I wanna touch you, baby. I wanna feel you too. I wanna see the sunrise and it's just me and you. Light it up, fall in love, let's have fun tonight. Make it up, fall in love, try. But you'll never be alone. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Maybe I'm right here. I'll hold you when things go wrong. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Maybe I'm right here. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. Maybe I'm right here. Get good love to your body. It's not you can stop it. Go get love to your body. It's not you only can stop it. Go get love to your body. It's not you only can stop it. Go get love to your body. Go get love to your body. But you'll never be alone. I'll be with you for dusk too long. I'll be with you for dusk too long. Baby, I'm right here. I'll hold you when things go wrong. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn. I'll be with you from dusk till dawn.